Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us from whatever time zone you're joining us from. Welcome to the Becoming Better Human Speaker Series. We're excited to share the amazing Diane Rosenfeld with you this evening. She's the founding director of the Gender Violence Program and a professor at Harvard Law School. She is also author of the Bonobo Sisterhood, Revolution Through Female Alliance. My name is Erica Merritt, and I have the pleasure of serving as Vice President of Thought Leadership and Strategy with Getting to We. Please take a moment to introduce yourselves to everyone by dropping your name. And if you are so inclined, share with us where you are hailing from and any other greeting that you'd like to share this evening. Let's see who we have with us. Welcome. Got Boston, Minnesota. Oh, we've got Costa Rica and Panama City. I love it. Got a whole contingency from Costa Rica tonight. Got Minnesota and Canada, all parts Ohio, New York, and so on. Well, thank you. Thank you from wherever you are joining us. We're so happy that you are here with us. As we gather during Women's History Month, we honor not only individual women leaders, but the power of women acting together. Progress for women has never been linear, universal, or evenly distributed. Black, Indigenous, and women of all colors, immigrant women, trans and queer women, disabled women, and so many others have led movements, often without recognition or safety. Tonight's conversation invites us to consider what becomes possible when women build alliance rather than competing for proximity to power. When solidarity replaces scarcity and collective courage reshapes systems. Getting to We is so pleased to bring you this series designed to build our learning community of advocates of we in places where we work, live, worship, and play. We encourage you to become a member of our community by signing up for our free newsletter. We promise to only send you valuable information and great resources. Please help us double our subscriber list by encouraging your network to subscribe as well. And you'll see something in the chat soon that'll make it easy for you to join us if you haven't already. Before I introduce you to Diane, you may wish to put your camera on speaker view so that we can make sure that you can see her prominently as we go along. And now, one other thing. As we move along, hopefully you are going to have many questions that you want to ask of our guest. I ask you to drop those questions into the chat. Alyssa from our team will be keeping an eye out for your questions and helping us track those along the way. And now, without any further ado, allow me to introduce you to Diane L. Rosenfeld. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Diane. Diane is founding director of the Gender Violence Program. She teaches at Harvard Law School And she is author of the Bonobo Sisterhood Revolution Through Female Alliance, a nationally recognized expert on Title IX, campus sexual assault prevention, the prevention of intimate partner homicide. She has served in the U.S. Department of Justice's Office of Violence Against Women and as an executive assistant attorney general in Illinois. Diane's work is exactly what we all need right now. At a point when questions of power, of accountability, sexual exploitation, and the rollback of women's rights are dominating headlines, Diane charts a different path for us, drawing from bonobo societies where alliance among females reduce aggression and foster more cooperative communities. She asks what becomes possible when women choose solidarity over scarcity and collective courage over competition. That question sits at the heart of the work of Getting to We. How we move from division to shared responsibility, from fragmentation to alignment, from us and them to we. Tonight's conversation invites us to consider gender solidarity not as a slogan, but as a strategy for a brighter, more inclusive, and equitable future. And I am so honored to have this opportunity to really continue our conversation, Diane. Thank you so much for being here with us.
It's absolutely my pleasure and honor. Thank you for having me. Thanks to Debbie Plummer and you for all your work in this really crucially important space and the space that is actually holds the secret for progress.
Love that.
This is it.
Well, we're going to be revealing those secrets tonight, right?
Yeah,
During our conversation.
yeah.
So, why don't we start? Diane, would you tell us a little bit about what drew you to the study of gender violence, and how did your experience shape your current work, thinking in particular about female alliance?
So I was working in the Illinois Attorney General's office and was filling in for the chief of the Women's Advocacy Division um, when I first started learning about domestic violence law and policy. And interestingly, and something that made me recall this because it's relevant to this conversation, I went to a conference and the speaker, Sarah Buell, said, if you haven't been a victim of domestic violence, you have more of an obligation to help. And I really heard that. And it was an invitation and it was a call to help. And I feel like Getting to We is a similar invitation. It's like, and when you invite people into a conversation, into a movement, into an effort, you get some surprising results. People will sometimes join you that you don't, you wouldn't have, you might not have asked them. This is really, you need connection to grow the movement. So I wound up shifting from environmental enforcement, which is what I was doing before I started working on women's advocacy, and started just really doing women's advocacy work because I saw that it's like if you didn't do it, it didn't get done.
Mm,
So, like law students and lawyers will go into the field of environmental law, but they don't do gender-based violence. So,
understood.
so I felt pretty called to the work and worked, as you said, at the Department of Justice on legal policy on violence against women and had worked on it at the state level and then taught. And then I realized that like law isn't really getting us anywhere. It has a
Mm,
particular intransigence to progress on gender-based violence issues. And I met a professor, Richard Wrangham, who's a primatologist, and he taught me about bonobos. So, if I may, I'll tell you about bonobos and how that
please
changed
tell
my
us
work and
about
brought me
bonobos.
to brought me to my current work. So, throughout primates, males use sexual coercion over females as reproductive resources. And chimpanzee males will batter their female partners, and orangutans do something that looks like sexual assault because the females are kicking and screaming. And then he told me about bonobos. And bonobos look, so for those of you who might not be familiar with bonobos, they are as related to humans as are chimpanzees. They're our last common ancestor. They shared 98.7% of human DNA, and they're as related to us as chimpanzees are. But most people don't know about them, but they will because we have to get the bonobo word out. Here's how the bonobo society is structured. If a female bonobo was aggressed upon by a male, she lets out a special cry. All the other females within earshot, whether they know her, like her, or are related to her, immediately descend from the trees, come to her aid, form an instantaneous coalition, and fend off the male. And sometimes they send him into isolation and they cut off his access to good food. And after he learns his lesson, he comes back and he rejoins the group, and they're very friendly and peaceful. They share food. Bonobos are xenophilic. Have you ever heard that word before? It means they love strangers. Chimpanzees and all other primates are xenophobic. Humans
Mm-hmm.
in the US are xenophobic. But there is another way. Evolutionarily, bonobos have eliminated male sexual coercion. They have wanted sexual
Amazing.
encounters, they have mutual encounters. Like I said, they share food. They're amazing. Everything I know about bonobos gives me hope. So I started, so I was very intrigued by this whole bonobo question, and I formed a course with Richard Wrangham, and we taught it at Harvard for 3 years. It was on theories of sexual coercion because I wanted to really dig into the primatology. I'm not a primatologist, and see if it was a real thing, if it was an apt comparison.
Yeah.
I didn't want to just take it lightly and say, oh, they sound great. They really are great. And everything I learned about them is amazing. So, bonobos seem to act on a principle that that's two parts, and I call it the bonobo principle. And if you agree with these parts, then you are part of the Bonobo Sisterhood. The first part, nobody has the right to harm my sister. Everybody pretty much agrees with that, right? Second part, everybody's my sister.
Mm,
Yeah.
So,
mm,
so that's the human application. If women
mm.
can get over our patriarchal divisions and realize that everyone's our sister, and instead of dividing against ourselves as we are taught to and socialized to in a patriarchy, if we can realize that we are absolutely stronger together when we consciously get over those divisions, those fake divisions, and how much stronger we are together, then we have a revolution.
I love that. Thank you. I think that is helpful to draw those connections for everyone. Along this line of uh, everyone's my sister, let's kind of jump into it. Um, your
Okay.
model centers solidarity and equality among women, but many women have experienced real divisions around race, around class, or other forms of identity or ideology. What conditions are necessary to build trust across these differences in a way that is durable?
I would say that the work that Getting to We does in the world and is doing and will do in the world is the answer to that question about building trust. You have to extend the invitation. And I think that you have to focus it on the artificiality of the divisions. So patriarchy doesn't work without women's participation in it. And women in a patriarchy get their power through their associations with men. Patriarchy, like by definition, is male-male alliances. It's a social structure based on male-male alliances. Law is a product of patriarchy. Our Constitution is a product of a patriarchal agreement between white propertied men. Law is patriarchal. So that's why we need to, I think, look outside of law and look at other structures, look at a bonobo structure and say, how would we consciously import that into human society? And it's very easy. I think, it's adopting the bonobo principle and realizing that it's a problem. It's almost a math problem of like division versus multiplication. We're like half the population, but we don't have half the power. We don't have half the rights, and law's never going to be retrofitted to reflect the rights, the innate human rights that we all have. I think we have to kind of start over.
One of the, I'm going to call it a tenet for the purposes of our conversation, or what we describe as our me-to-we skill sets,
Mhm.
is um, using social privilege for mutual benefit.
Mm.
And I think in order to do that, you have to have a sense that it exists. And you have to have a sense that there is at once this powerful shared experience and ways in which the not necessarily how we think about each other interpersonally, but the way in which the world operates and treats us differently, which I feel like you do such a powerful job of describing in your book. Um, and the realization that, frankly, it's not working for, it's not really work. The current system, right? This patriarchal system isn't working for anyone, actually, as well as they might think. But it is working better for some people than others.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I call for in the book is imagining that we wrote a new constitution. And instead of instead of thinking, like really rethinking what equality even means. And like right now, when we think about sex equality, we think about how women measure up to men. And then the women category gets broken down. So like white women get 77 cents on the dollar and black women get 69 cents on the dollar, et cetera, et cetera. As if men are the standard for like what's right and acceptable and valuable. And I say, what if we just completely change the focus of that and we say all women are created equal and we're not we're not similarly or equally situated within society, but all women are subject to patriarchal violence. They share different locations to it. Many are more vulnerable than others, and for sure, women of color are more vulnerable than more privileged white women. What I want to do is, and what I say in the book is, it's a call for all women to honestly interrogate their own privileges and their own pains and see what resources we have that we can share with our sisters and then to do it. So if I'm white, I am white. I
I hadn't
sometimes,
noticed, Diane.
thank you. That is so nice of you to say. Um, I sometimes am called to speak for my Black sisters and brothers,
Mhm.
like at conferences and stuff. And if I have power because people listen to me differently because I'm white, and I can tell them about how, how some set of inequality problems within the Black community could be helped by our participation, that's great. And that's my duty to do that. I mean, I think
That's how
that
you
we
answer
could,
the call.
yeah, answer the call, but also like women's women's resources aren't valued in a patriarchal economy either. So, like our care resources are only valued if we pay someone else to do it, you know?
Mm.
And I think that women could create their own currency, like a bonobo currency, where after we interrogate our privilege and our resources, to consciously share them with one another, we need to value our own resources. Protection is a resource. Bonobos protect one another's offspring. Bonobos midwife for one another. An infant bonobo outranks socially an adult male bonobo. And he knows
That's a
if he
shift.
messes with an offspring, he's he he's going to get messed with.
Yeah.
And we really need that. And that's a big protection is something that has everything to do with like living a good life, that you need protection and women can protect one another. So that's the other big theme of the book is we need to protect our sisters. Here's the book.
Diane, can you talk about the male protection racket?
Yes.
I
Um,
love this part of the book, and I had never thought about it this way. So it was just share it with everyone who
it
hasn't
came,
had a chance to read it yet.
thank you. It came to me in a very humorous way. I was like on a flight and had run out of things to read. And I was looking at Sky Mall magazine and saw an ad for Safety Man. And Safety Man was a blow up doll of a white man with salt and pepper hair that was being sold and marketed to women as their protection. And first I start laughing at it because it's pretty humorous, but then I was like, wait a second. What do women need protection from? If I'm walking down the street and there's like a group of women, I'll say hi and smile and walk by and not think of anything. If I'm on the street and there are men, you're like vigilant, because you could be harmed. Or in intimate partner situations, you could be harmed. Yeah. So I call it the fallacy of the male protection racket. The idea that women need men to protect them from other men, because women lose in this calculation. Because our, when we delegate rather, our safety and protection to someone else, that gives all of those someone else's the right to decide who among us is worthy of being protected, right? So you're either protected or you're prostituted. You're a wife or a prostitute. And that's how men divide women along lines of sexual access. And that's the product of the male protection racket. And that's the fallacy of it. And I think we can't do that. So I'm very happy to have learned and be learning about the empowerment self-defense community and how much valuable lessons they have to teach us about we can defend ourselves and we each have a self-worth defending. So that's the pivot of the book is chapter
Yeah.
6 called a self-worth defending. And
Can
you
you talk
learn,
about that? The
yeah,
idea, the concept of having the self-worth defending?
yeah, I think that, in this divided world, um, it has effects on your self-esteem. You get messages from culture about your own importance and the importance of whatever group you belong to. And living in a patriarchy damages women's self-esteem because we're second-class citizens. We need permission to do things. We can't just act. Everything we do is measured differently. We're not taken as seriously, but we can take each other seriously. We can like stop looking to men as the standard of equality and all things and start really reorienting towards the power of female alliance.
One of the things that you said, and you said it, but we didn't dig into it, you talked about the limitations of relying on legal remedies to end gender violence. what does a solution look like that goes beyond legislation or court rulings?
Sisterhood and like showing up with your sisters and calling out to your sisters and not doing things alone. So like and that also kind of blends into a court system. So a lot of times when I've helped on cases, I've been able to get really different results than if I hadn't just by showing up. And people can show up and put pressure on the system to pay attention to a domestic violence case in court. I mean, it boggles my mind every day that there are courtrooms filled with terrorized women in every city in this country, and we still haven't like figured out that, battered women shelters, it's not the answer to send her to a shelter. It's the answer to hold the offender accountable. And how do we do that in a not a traditional carceral way?
Can you talk a little bit, again, for folks who haven't had a chance to read the book yet, could you give an example of an intervention that you were a part of that might illuminate what this could look like in real time for people?
So, sure. So, one was, well, it's more court based than it is um, bonobo based. So, I'm thinking of a couple of court cases, but one case where there was a bonobo call to help out this person, and I had just landed. I'm from Chicago originally, and I had just landed in Chicago to visit family. And it turned out that the case was in Chicago. So I talked to the person and then went to court with her the next day. And the prosecutor came and he's like holding all of these files. And he's completely overworked and he hasn't even looked at her file. And she's in this like very high risk domestic violence situation. And I've looked at the police reports and I've got like, I wrote a letter the night before to the prosecutor and the judge, and I said, I'm an expert on domestic violence lethality assessment. This case is highly lethal and needs to be taken seriously. Domestic violence cases, and especially domestic violence homicide, is so predictable as to be preventable. And you have to treat all cases as potentially lethal, and then from the criminal justice system, take them seriously. So, so I was able to just get her case completely turned around, and this guy was going to get out on $2,500 bail, and he was instead his bail was increased to $250,000, and he was held until he had a full psychiatric examination, and et cetera, et cetera. So that was an instance where we could like turn around a citizen's experience with the justice system and with her own ability to feel like she could access justice. Um, we have another case going on in North Carolina where Bonobo sisters descended on the court and it looked like it was going really well. And then the hearing got continued and not as many bonobos were there and the judge didn't do well. So we're figuring out a bonobo response to that. But it
You
helps
said,
everything. Yeah, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I thought it was a good moment to jump in there,
Yeah,
but when you talk about selves worth defending, it makes me think about um, being able to see that for others, maybe who can't quite see that for themselves yet.
right.
And there's a piece in there too about a belief that your effort can make an impact. So when you're on the other side of it in a position to help, recognizing that your advocacy and your support and your showing up could absolutely make a difference instead of being, I think we're in a moment now where there's so much happening
Yeah.
and people are so overwhelmed that they may just lean into there's nothing to be done, instead of recognizing that they can have a positive impact.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that we saw a lot of Bonobo Sisterhood action in Minneapolis,
Hmm.
where women were really showing up for each other and for a lot of people taking to the streets, even if, they weren't the ones who would be affected by um, the immigration raids.
You say
Mm.
something, oh, I'm sorry. You say
No, go
something in
ahead.
your book too about anyone can be a part of the Bonobo Sisterhood. Anyone who believes in these principles can be a part of the Bonobo Sisterhood. And I know we have some men here with us tonight. And it sounds like they can also be a part of the Bonobo Sisterhood.
Of course they can.
Yeah.
That's a great point and question. We have to be reaching out to, our male, to any gender, but males are really hurt and disadvantaged in a patriarchy as well, because they are subject to patriarchal violence. Like patriarchy is a hierarchy, and it needs constant reinforcement in order to stay alive. And men are afraid to challenge that hierarchy because there are punishments for it. They can lose social status among other men, but the benefits are so much higher than the cost of remaining within a patriarchy. And I would love to see many more of our brothers come into this movement to stop their brothers from perpetuating patriarchal violence. I think it's also the case that, like we said at the beginning, the invitation really matters. Have women's groups from the past like really invited men into the conversation? We need to do that. And I think you're doing some of that work.
We have for a long time been focused on building social trust among women and are just sort of entering into a space of starting to think about what does this look like for men with other men, and then ultimately what does it look like for all of us
Mhm.
to be able to build that trust across a number of differences. Um, I did notice in the chat that Debbie dropped in something, and it says, "I don't think you are suggesting that we flip the script and make the nation matriarchal and make males subordinate. Could you clarify?"
Absolutely. So people think that a bonobo society is matriarchal, but it's actually cooperative. And it's not matriarchal in the following way. Bonobo females leave their natal kin. So they only have the benefit of their mother-daughter relationship for the first few years of their life, and then they have to emigrate to find another troop to hang out with. So it's not really matriarchal. Males get their social status from their relationships to their mothers, which is kind of cool. Um, and it is absolutely the case that the females will not be and are not violent to the males as the males are to females in a patriarchy. So in the US, every day, 3 to 4 women are killed by their intimate partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
There,
numbers,
yeah.
the numbers, honestly, as I was reading, it's one thing like to intellectually know something, and then it's another thing to hear, you put percentages on it. It feels very different. It was very alive for me as I was reading.
Yeah. And the racial differences are astonishing. I mean, Black women are at a much higher risk of domestic violence homicide than are white women, and just higher rates of violence overall. And um, like I've worked in different communities trying to change that. So I worked in Houston with a family court prosecutor who was trying to bring down the domestic violence homicide rate because the rate of Black women who were being strangled to death by their partners was like was crazy. They were seeing a spate of it. So we were really focused on that. And and the guys would say, like in their defense, well, she just likes it rough. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to kill her. I was just strangling her. And the reason that I mention this is because, for one thing, strangulation in pornography has become much, much more mainstream. And strangulation, and actually, like in hookup culture, is very mainstream right now. And we don't talk about it. And we don't have like a strong cultural critique of like what porn is teaching boys and men and how it's also conditioning women. And
Yeah.
it's strangulation is a felony in most states. And the reason I first started working on it was because of it in domestic violence situations, because it's such an effective way for an abuser to bring his victim within seconds of losing her life. And now I have these conversations with my students, my classes, about like, no, strangulation is not, that's not fun, that's really dangerous.
Yeah, we actually, I know that we have some folks on with us from the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center,
Mm.
and we also the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence, amongst perhaps other organizations. And I actually had the pleasure of going to the state of CRCC last week. And one of the things that stood out for me in hearing, in listening, was around sometimes the difficulty of funding around prevention, right? There, that sometimes it's not that it's easy. Funding in the nonprofit space is not easy ever, and is less easy in this moment. But uh, things that focus on preventing harm are much less likely to be supported. And I mean, that's such an important part of what we're talking about right now. We're talking about prevention.
Right, but we can build that work, and actually self having a self-worth defending and learning how to defend yourself is the key. Because when you learn self-defense, you learn it like from the outside in. You can do these moves and you can defend yourself, and then somehow it ignites you from the inside out, like, oh, I can defend myself. Maybe I'm worthy of defending. It's
Mm.
like a really different mindset. And then the thing that I want to transfer is how, with a lot of women, like they will be the first to tell their friends, like, I think you're in a bad relationship. He doesn't treat you that well. And I'm just using a heterosexual cis
Sure.
example, but it happens in all relationships. Um, but they might not be taking the same advice for themselves, you
Oh,
know?
it's so much
Like
easier to tell everybody
it's
else
so much
what
easier
they
and
should
it's
be
so
doing.
right, and it's easier to protect your friend and tell her, but we often treat our friends better than we actually treat ourselves. But we have to treat ourselves like as someone we love because we are all lovable and worthy. And we all have selves
Absolutely.
absolutely worth defending. And aggressive men don't expect us to self-defend. It throws them completely off their game, and it teaches you like a whole skill set. It's like a toolbox, and you can just kind of pull out of the toolbox things that you need, and it kind of bypasses your brain in a way because you just go to the protection, and sometimes it might not work. So and the person would never be blamed for not protecting herself or not doing something that she learned in self-defense. But we have really untapped power to defend ourselves, and then that makes us more able to envision defending our sisters. And if we can get into the bonobo mindset that, like, nobody has the right to do that to her, I'm coming to her defense. Even if you over defend, and the person's really like fine and it was just nothing, you know, but like to really be listening for a bonobo call and be ready to respond to it.
I see a question that I'm going to grab, but I would just want to say to the group, please, if you have questions, drop them into the chat because we want to pull you into the conversation and we want to make sure that we are having the conversation that you came to hear. If there's something that you were hoping that I would ask about, or there's something that you're curious about, please by all means drop your thoughts into the chat. So I see a question from Lisa around wondering if you talk about porn, the thing we don't want to talk about, learning the past few years that so many young people have such easy access and how it portrays violence as what real men do and what women want. And I've had to get brave in talking with my kids about this.
Great, great. And there are resources like Culture Reframed is a good organization run by Gail Dines, and she has a lot of online resources that are helpful for parents talking to kids. And that's the really crucial conversation.
Well, even adult kids, because I happen to know that her kids are older. So even having these conversations with our, teens, with our adult children,
Yeah.
and unfortunately here in Ohio, there was an awful sextortion case that ended with the suicide of a young person
Mhm.
here in town. And so I think, things like that have us thinking differently, hopefully, and having more of those conversations. There's also something in the chat from Rosa about how self-defense puts the responsibility on the survivor. Um, and talk prevention is more than the 4Ds or primary prevention. Interruption and distraction are not always safe for communities of color. Can can you talk a little bit about that?
So I think that's a great question, and it's something that comes up a lot when people say, well, isn't self-defense like victim blaming because you're putting the onus on the potential victim
Sure.
to fix the crime? And and that answer is that it's reality, not responsibility. So self-defense is a way of dealing with the reality that women are overwhelmingly assaulted by men, not the responsibility. And there's no reason you can't work on both at the same time. And if you can prevent one assault from happening, then fantastic. That, you know, helps the person's whole life if they can self-defend. And
I
I
also
call it
heard you talk about collective self-defense too.
yeah, that when you have people who like come to your aid or are with you or that you can call or that help you address something that's happened, the the aggressive person knows that the calculation is different now because you're not just dealing with one isolated woman. You are now offending an entire community. And isolation is like the key tactic of abusers.
Yeah. I have a question for you about, so a lot of I've heard you talk about the legal limitations, right? The limitations of the system and the focus on, intervening at the level at which we can, in showing up for each other. What does that look like as a long-term solution?
I really think that we need to reconceive of a legal system. Like, and we could do that through a constitutional convention that is the result of bridge building and Bonobo Sisterhood building, where we really do start to engage in the thought experiment of all women are created equal, that we are all subject to patriarchal violence. Our lives are limited and shrunken by it. Really, we share a sense of unfreedom, and it's a different sense. But the laws, like historically, did not mean to include women, and definitely did not mean to include Black women. And law has proven, in my estimation, to be incapable of, like I said, retrofitting because it's structural. So here's a structural thing that we still see in today's world, even though it was like a long, long time ago. So in the 18th century, there was a legal treatise written by Sir William Blackstone, and he explained that the legal difference between a man killing his wife and a woman killing her husband was as follows. This is like all you need to know about law. You didn't know you were getting a law class tonight, did you?
I'm here
If
for it.
if a man killed his wife, it was legally the same as if he had killed a stranger. If a woman killed her husband, it was an act of treason for which she would be put to death.
Well, and I know this because of your book that
But that's all you need to know. I mean,
but
an
that
act of
trend
treason,
continues. Yeah.
right? The stand your ground rules are like wildly overimposed on prosecuting Black women for killing their abusers in self-defense. So, like, that's one area of the law that I'm very eager to really disrupt and change is self-defense laws.
Yeah.
So I think
Here,
that we have to build our self-defense and then have the laws reflect it.
I realized that there was a question I missed, Diane. I want to make sure that I get it in there. The first one is, do you find that people understand their duty or obligation to each other or accept it to each other, to women as citizens, etc.?
I'm not sure I understand the
And
question.
I think this was about this idea of answering the call, right?
Uh,
People actually showing up for each other, not just what we would like to see happen,
mhm.
but what often really happens in real time.
Well, I think getting the concept out there about bonobos and bonobo calls can be a first step towards people thinking, you know what, I should ask for help. I should make a call because I really need help and it's okay. And letting people know, people are really, in my experience, they're reluctant to ask for help because they don't think that they have like a self worth defending. We have to defend other people's selves, even if they don't feel they have their own self, that their own self is worth defending. We have to recognize the inherent value in all of our sisters and really realize that patriarchal divisions are made for a reason. And that reason is to keep us divided. Because when we realize that those divisions are fictional and less important than what unites us, then
Well, and that's
patriarchy's
often a
patriarchy's
strategy,
in
right?
trouble.
To
Sorry?
make it's often a strategy to make women feel like they are not worth defending, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of isolation and the shame
Yeah.
and embarrassment that
Yeah.
comes with gender-based violence
Yeah. And
often also.
that's all cultural. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You
Oh,
were
you're
saying
fine. That's it.
it's
That's all it's.
it's all cultural. And it's all like around marriage. And all cultures are like too ashamed to come forward to say that they're in an abusive relationship. And, the husband is like so loved in the community and they don't want to hurt his reputation or, but it's really like the similarities are consistent around the world. And
There's
there's a thing going on that we have to like realize through our unification.
there's another question that I want to make sure that I get in about the rising cases of sexual assault and domestic violence reported with women against women, especially in the armed forces, of which is rarely discussed. Not sure
Yeah,
if that's
I'm not that,
something
I'm
you're familiar with.
not, it hasn't really come across.
Okay. Okay. I want to then, we are getting close to wrapping up. I want to just invite you. You have, this amazing audience here with us as you think about spreading the word. What do you want to leave folks with tonight? What do you want to make
Confidence.
sure they walk away with?
Yeah, I want you to walk away with confidence that and entitlement that you can create your own Bonobo sisterhood and that what you do does make a difference, and to start thinking consciously about doing the work that Getting to We is doing, about building bridges with people that you know, having intentional conversations, starting out by talking about how are women all created equal? What resources do I have that I can share? What would a sharing economy look like? Just so many ideas. There's so much room for growth because this is in a way like it's not a new idea, but it's a new way of looking at it because bonobos are living proof that patriarchy is not inevitable. And
Mm.
they're our closest cousins, and they're happy and peaceful. We just need to be bonobo.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us this evening,
It
Diane,
was my
and
honor. I want to know
helping
how,
us to think about.
yeah, I want to know
No,
how we should work together, like how we
uh,
amplify each
absolutely,
other.
absolutely. As you know, becoming better humans is at the center of the work that we do. And my hope is that folks are walking away this evening with some ways that they know that they can be better humans for each other, right?
Yeah.
The root of it is really about our collective and shared humanity, which is what matters most. And so thank you for helping us to think about that tonight and for sharing the amazing work that you do in the world. We are very grateful.
Thank
And I'm
you.
seeing some thank yous from the audience as well.
That's very sweet.
Our
Um,
our goal at Getting to We is to sponsor learning experiences like this series and to bring resources on turning us and them into we to the widest audience possible. There are many resources available on our website to support all of you in your journey. And we will be sending some follow-up resources to you following our session. And so be on the lookout in the next day or two for some of those resources. You can support Getting to We always by making a tax-deductible donation. We are grateful for any amount that fits into your budget. And again, I want to say thank you to you, Diane, and I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight. And I wish you all a wonderful evening and yours, we are yours in sisterhood.
Thank you. That was just, it's been so lovely getting to know you. And like I could just talk to you for long,
Ditto.
long days. So I look forward to that.
Oh, me too.
Thank you
Take
so
good
much. And
care.
thanks everyone for coming.
Turning us and them into we